It looks so magnificent.
Yeah,
Live
we
on
are
Carlton Hill. Oh my
Carlton Hill.
God.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Isaac Edupobi, a senior support worker currently living in the UK. On this channel, I bring you information and updates about the UK, opportunities, cultures, and everything about the UK. Now, in today's episode, I would want to talk about the Schengen Visa and how to apply for a Schengen Visa in the UK. I believe this information would also be very vital to individuals outside the UK who would want to be applying or who would be applying for a Schengen visa. I recently traveled to the Schengen area and I spent almost 2 to 3 weeks exploring countries in Europe. And I've had people coming into my DMs asking me to give them information about how to apply for a Schengen visa in the UK. And the thing is, one thing I always tell like immigrants or students, whether you are working or you are schooling, is that one thing that you should do is to build travel history. The moment you get opportunity to travel to the UK, to the US, to the Canada, this is an opportunity for you to explore other countries. You get to see the scenic and historic monuments of these countries, and also it builds your travel history such that if you now plan on going to other European countries or other Western countries, it becomes very, very easy to be granted a visa. And it's easy to move in Europe as compared to, let's say, someone who comes from Africa, especially like with all these visa restrictions and stuff like that. So today I'll be talking about Schengen visa and how to apply for a Schengen visa from the UK. So just stick with me. Yeah, so basically a Schengen visa is a visa that allows individuals or immigrants who are not from the EU to apply for a short stay visa for about 90 days. It depends on the country that you're applying to, but it's a short stay visa which allows you to stay in the Schengen area. One thing about the Schengen visa is that if you are being granted a Schengen visa to, let's say, a country like Germany, you get the opportunity to travel to all the other European countries without a visa. So basically, the Schengen visa allows you to explore different countries whilst not necessarily having to get a visa or what have you. So when you apply for a Schengen visa to, let's say, Austria, you can use that same visa to enter Germany, Italy, Budapest, or whatsoever. And that is one thing that makes the Schengen visa very, 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 very top notch. And and I'm asking myself that whilst traveling in Europe, it was very easy to, navigate your way through Europe and go to different countries as compared to Africa, which is a bit of a problem, but that's not the main focus of this video. Let me just go straight to the point. Now, so if you want to apply for a Schengen visa from the UK, the first thing that you have to do is to have a passport. You should make sure that your passport is valid for the time that you'll be traveling to the Schengen area and back from the Schengen area. So if you know that your passport is about to expire by the time that you'll be traveling, I would advise that you would have to renew your passport before you plan on traveling abroad. So you'd have to get a passport. A passport, it's a document that allows you to travel. Without a passport, there is no way that you are going to travel. So you must make sure that your passport is up to date and is current and not expired. So that's the first thing that you should get when you are planning on applying for a Schengen visa. Now, the second thing that you should be doing is to apply to the particular country that you want to be visiting. So you'd have to fill in the application form and then provide your details. So for instance, I did my Schengen visa to Austria, And so because Austria was my country of entry, or Austria was the country that I'll be entering before I go to the other Schengen countries, or Austria is the country that I'll be spending most of my time in. What I did was I applied for a Schengen visa from the Austrian embassy. So I had to fill the application form. If you go to the Austrian website, the application form is there. Is the Visa C. You download it and then you just fill the forms up. So if it's not Austria that you want to do and you are focusing on, let's say, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, it's the same process. So you'd have to fill in the application form with your details, your passport number, your country of residence, your nationality, the time that you'll be traveling, how many days you'll be spending, how you'll be funding your travel, whether you'll be sponsored or you'll be paying for everything by yourself. So these are some information that you'll find on the application form. It's very similar to most, or let me say, all of the Schengen countries. So you'd have to fill your application form. Now, the second thing on the list that you should be doing when you want to apply for a Schengen visa in the UK is to prepare your bank statements and your pay slips. Now, if you are someone who, let's say, is working in the UK, most countries will require you to submit a bank statement or pay slips for the last 4 months, 3 to 4 months. Some countries will ask you to submit about 6 months bank statement. When I was doing my application for Austria, what happened was I was being told to submit 6 months worth bank statement, and the sixth month should be not. I think they said it shouldn't be older than 2 weeks. So I had to go to the bank. I downloaded and I printed out all my bank statements and my pay slips. And the final pay slip, I went to the bank. I told them to generate a pay slip for me and stamp it. So they did as I requested. And so I just added it to my application. So if you are planning on traveling to any of the Schengen countries, you need to make sure that you have a bank statement and the money in your account should be sufficient enough to cater for your living expenses whilst in the Schengen area. You cannot, let's say, have a bank statement with a balance of, let's say, £500 and expect to be granted a visa whilst you've applied to stay for, let's say, 2 weeks in the Schengen area. The consular or whoever is going through your application will be asking themselves some questions that how would you be able to sustain yourself? Like for Austria, for instance, when I did my research, I think they were like, you should have at least £50 to be spending every day on food. So if let's say you have your accommodation and your flight sorted, you should be asking yourself that okay, if the budget is, let's say, £50 or £70 or £80, multiplied by the number of days that you are planning on staying. So you need to make sure that you have sufficient funds. At least I wouldn't give you a specific figure, but I would say that at least something ranging between £2,000 to, let's say, £3,000 or £4,000 will be sufficient enough, and that money should be in your account. It should be in your account as of the time you are applying, because they will do their research and they'll find out to make sure that that is indeed the amount of money that you have in your account. If you are working, you should ensure that you get pay slips, because you are given pay slips whenever you are being paid. Print out all your pay slips. It's evidence to prove or to show that you are financially strong enough, or you are financially sufficient to cater for your living expenses and stuff like that in the Schengen area. So that is one thing that you should bear in mind. Now, the third thing that you should also have is your itinerary. So what I always tell people is you don't necessarily have to pay for your flight itinerary. Now, if you go to booking.com allows you to book flights, hotels, or whatsoever. So you can book a reservation with an airline. When I was going to the Schengen area, when I was going to Austria, I used Ryanair. I use Ryanair as the airline, and their prices are very, very modest. They have humble prices. which will fit or suit each and everyone's budget. So I use Ryanair, and how do you call it? I booked a flight reservation. I printed it out. So if you know that you'd be traveling to a Schengen area, make sure that you have your flight itinerary or your flight reservation ready, because it's something that they will ask. And if possible, if you know that, let's say you are going to France and you've planned everything to say that I'm spending maybe 3 days in Nice, 4 days in Paris, I'll go to Disneyland. You can also book the itinerary, whether train, bus. You also print everything out and you attach it. It shows that you have something planned. You are not going to overstay. What I did was I booked my itinerary not just one way, but return. If you book one way, it's very suspicious. Why? Because if you are visiting for tourism purposes or visiting family and friends, you don't expect to book one way. You should book return because we know that you'll be coming back. So that's what I did. I booked a return ticket as well because I knew that I'll be spending most of my time in Austria. I'll be entering Austria and I'll be coming out from Austria. You don't necessarily have to come out from Austria if, let's say, you are returning back to the UK or Canada or whatsoever. But if you booked Austria as your point of entry, then you should also make sure that you use Austria as your point of entry. But when coming or when leaving the Schengen area, you can leave from Italy, you can leave from Norway, you can leave from any country that you choose to leave from. So yeah, so you need to make sure that you have your flight reservation ready. Now, the next thing on the list is your travel insurance. Without your travel insurance, I don't think that you'll be given the Schengen visa. So travel insurance more or less covers any emergencies that happens or that would be happening whilst in the Schengen area. So if, let's say, you fall ill, or let's say there's an emergency, you have to go to the hospital, or you pass away, nobody knows what will happen whilst you're on your journey. So you would have to get a travel insurance, which is I think up to £30,000, which covers all these things I've mentioned. When I was going to Austria, I used Europe Assist. So Europe Assistance or Europe Assist would actually, it's more or less like a travel insurance policy company that allows you to book travel insurance policies or whatsoever with them. I paid, I think, around £28 for about 2 weeks in Austria, which covered almost everything that I spoke about. So you should have a travel insurance as one of the main things that you cannot do away with. So please make sure that you get a travel insurance, print it out, and add it to your documentation. The next thing that I would say is when you are also preparing to make an application to a Schengen area, you should write your statement of purpose or the reason why you are traveling to the Schengen area and why you should be granted a visa. So I wrote a statement of purpose and why the consulate should grant me the visa. So I addressed that letter to the embassy, the Austrian embassy in London. And I told them that, you know what, I'm going to Austria on this date. I want to explore their culture, their culinary delights, their cobbled web streets. I want to explore, how do you call it, some historic buildings and monuments that I've heard of and read about. I told them the places that I'll be visiting, the Hallstatt Park, the Holmesbrunn Gardens. I just wrote everything down, typed it, printed it out. Whoever would take your application and glance through it to be like, okay, this person knows what they're about. So that is what I did. I wrote, whether you call it a statement of purpose or whatsoever, or travel statement or whatsoever, however you want to name it. I added it to my documents, even though they didn't request for it. I'm like, you know what? Let me just add it to it so that they'll know that my traveling is genuine. I'm not just traveling to exploit the system or whatsoever. So that's one thing that you should bear in mind. Now, again, another thing is if you are working in the UK, you should get an employment letter from your employer. You should get an employment letter. It's something that you can't do away with. If you are on, let's say, a skilled worker visa, you should get an employment letter. If you are a student, you should get a letter from your faculty, from a lecturer, from your department, detailing that you guys are no longer in term time and you want to travel to explore. You are on your studies, you'll be finishing this month, this is what you are studying. And because you guys are on break, you want to explore this country and just get that letter and add it to your application. If you are working, just let your employer know that this is what you intend of doing. You are planning on traveling to the Schengen area, so if they can give you a letter to back your application up. That is what I did. I wrote to the HR of my organization and I told them that, you know what, I am traveling to Europe. I booked annual leave, so I'm traveling to Europe for 2 weeks. Can you give me a letter? They gave me a letter. They addressed it to the Austrian embassy and I added it to my application and I submitted it. So that is one thing that you can also add, or you should, it's a must. You should add to your application whenever you are traveling to the Schengen area. Now, the next thing that I would talk about is now once you've gathered all these documents or this documentation, you need to make sure that you book your application appointment or you book an appointment. Now, what most countries do or what most Schengen countries do is that there's a third party that you'd have to go through to make the application. They don't make a decision on your visa, but the third party will get your documentation and then send your documentation to the consulate, and the consulate or the embassy will now make a decision on your application. When I applied to Austria for my Schengen visa, I used TLS Consult. So with TLS Consult, they are more or less like a third party whereby you submit your application and stuff like that. Then once you are done submitting your application, they now forward your application to the embassy for the embassy to make a decision. So you should make sure that you apply in advance because sometimes the slots are limited. There are a lot of people who have appointments. So if you know that, let's say you want to travel in December, I would advise you start making your application now so that by November you get a slot, then December you book you'll be in the country that you want to go to. Because I remember I traveled in July and I wanted to book my appointment slot for May. But for Austria, what they do is they release all their applications, all their appointments. TLS releases their appointments by the 15th of every month. So if by the 20th of that month, you've not gotten a slot, you'd have to wait till the following month. So what I did was I applied for my slots on I think June 14th, 15th. I was always on the website checking. Then once I got a slot, I applied for it. So you need to apply in advance so that you don't end up having to postpone your travel plans because there are no appointment slots or whatsoever. And one thing that I also forgot to mention that just came in mind is that you should also have a passport picture. So every country has the passport picture requirements that you should have when you are applying for the Schengen visa. So if you go to how do you call it, a photo lab or whatsoever, you can just select the country that you want to go to and take a picture, and then you attach the picture to your application. For most of these third-party companies like TLS, BLS, and stuff like that, or VFS and stuff like that, what they will do is when you are checking out, they will tell you that if you want to take a passport picture in their how do you call it, in their facility, you would have to pay like £12 or £20 or whatsoever. So the decision is up to you as to whether you would take a picture in there or you just get a picture from a photo lab or whatsoever if you intend of going for the appointment. So yeah, these are the documents that you should have ready, prepared, book in advance, and then just go for your appointment. And remember that you are not supposed to staple the application forms or whatsoever. So what I did was I bought clips, these paper clips, and then I just clipped it together, but I didn't staple it. Don't staple it. Don't staple it. It could lead to your application being refused. Please don't staple it. Just arrange your documentation very nice, your itinerary, your accommodation. If you've not booked an accommodation, you can go to booking.com, book an accommodation, um, get the reservation. How do you call the reservation for the accommodation? Whether it's Airbnb that you want to use, I use Airbnb, so you book it. Once you are done booking it, add it to your document. If it's not an Airbnb that you'll be using and you'll be staying with someone, what you do is you can get a letter from the person with the person's address, permits, then you attach it to your application. So yeah, so get your itinerary ready, your accommodation, your travel insurance, your employment letter, your student letter, if you are a student, your employment letter if you are working, and then your residence permit. So if you are a student, you have to make a photocopy of the front and back of your student permit. And then if you are working, you'd also have to make photocopies of your work permit. And then you attach it to your application. Then you apply and then you wait for the results. So mostly they would ask you whether you would want your passport to be returned by courier or you want to pick it up. So if you add the express courier to the checkout basket, what would mean is once a decision is being made on your application, DHL or whosoever would return your application to the address that you give them. So basically, these are these are the process that you'd have to go through if you want to apply for a Schengen visa. I did Austrian. I applied for a Schengen visa to Austria. I got my visa under 48 hours. I think I made a video on that. You can check it out. So once you have all this documentation ready, trust me, I don't think you'll be refused your visa. So I believe this information has been very vital and it's been very informative in helping you to make a decision on your Schengen visa application or in helping you to apply for a Schengen visa to any of the Schengen countries. I know I've said a lot. I don't want to bore you guys with a lot of information, but you can also do your own research for the particular Schengen country that you want to go to. And then just make sure that you gather all your documentation and then you'll be good to go. So basically, these are the steps or these are some of the things that you have to bear in mind when you are planning on applying for a Schengen visa from the UK. I know that it's for those in the UK, but if you are also outside the UK, there are a lot of similarities, or it's very very similar to what I've just explained in this video. If you've enjoyed this video up until now, I would want you to like, share, subscribe, and click on the post notification button so that whenever I post new videos, YouTube will notify you on it. Thank you very much for granting me your audience. And until then, I will see you in my next video.